Alright, so today I wanted to walk through a basic installation for PocketMine-MP for anybody that's wanting a private Minecraft Bedrock Edition server. Uh, Through the setup that we're going to do today, we're going to use either a Linux VPS or a Linux host to do everything for the server. I'm using a VPS, but you're welcome to use whatever preference that you have for a Linux server. So as long as you're set up and ready to roll, there are some things that have to be done before we get started with this. First, you have to have the host machine set up with Linux. It has to be done. You have to be able to log in and access the terminal. The second thing is that you need to be connected to the internet with that machine, whether it be a VPS or whether it be a physical machine locally that you're using. It has to be connected to the internet. All right. So once you have those two things out of the way, then the third thing that has to be taken care of is that port number 19132, 19132, say that a handful of times through this video, that port number has to be open and able to be connected to by clients outside of the machine. All right, so whatever network settings you've got to change, whatever you've got to take care of with your firewall settings, with your VPS, whatever, all of that needs to be handled before you start the process of setting up your server. So if you have those three things done, you're ready to get started. This process is very simple, and the developers for PocketMine have gone to great lengths to make this very, very easy. So this should only take a couple minutes. We're going to walk through this real quick. So you can see that we're setting up on version 1.2.13. This is the newest client as of March 14th, or I'm sorry, April 14th. So open a web browser and go to pmmp.io. This information is incredibly important, and the home page for PocketMine has got lots of useful info. What we're interested in the moment is in the top right hand corner, a link for resources and documentation, and we're going to go here and take a look at the installation instructions for PocketMine for a standard Linux host. So on the left hand side of the page you can find the link for installation. And then what you've got right here on the screen, everything that's showing right now, all of this, that's it. That's all it takes to get started. Essentially, there's two steps. These two right here. So the first thing you need to do is on your host, whatever machine you're using for your host, you need to create a directory where you're going to install PocketMine-MP and then change into that directory. So I'm already connected to my VPS. Let's take a look. We're going to make a directory. We can see that my current home folder is empty. So make directory, PocketMine-MP. Alright, so if we check, the folder's been created, and then we're going to change directories into the folder we just created. We take a look, this folder's empty, we're ready to roll. So we come back and take a look. The next step is to then use curl or wget. You do not have to use both of these commands. You pick one, you use the one. I'm going to use wget. This option tends to be the preferred or best for what I run. You're welcome to use whatever you prefer, whichever one is your, best for your flavor of Linux. I'm running an Ubuntu 16.04 server, so I know that right out of the box, wget is going to work for me. So we go back, paste the command in without any changes, any modifications, none whatsoever, just exactly as it is. Once you've got it up there, press the enter key, let the server do its thing. It's going to run a real basic script, and you'll see that it's going to go ahead and get your server file for you for PocketEdition version 1.2.13. In addition to that, it's going to install the PHP version that's necessary for running it. And when all of this is done and it finishes, it lets you know that it's done and that you're ready to run the server for the first time. So to do that, you run start.sh. So we're going to run start.sh, and we're going to get the initial startup wizard for first run. All right, so the options here are really basic. They're really simple. I'm going to walk through the whole thing for anybody who may not ever have done this before. So we're going to select our language. You see that there's a fantastic list here and it's well supported. We're going to select English. Do we accept the license agreement? This is the only default option that if you just press the enter key and don't make a change to this option, that it will stop the setup. So we're going to change this to yes because I accept the agreement. Do we want to skip the setup wizard? No, I'm not going to skip the setup wizard. We're going to walk through all the steps this time. Important information here. At any point, you can change the server.properties file to change these settings. And if you do that, you need to restart your server, and I'm going to do something here in a little bit that will show you what that looks like. But Remember that any of the settings that you set up here can be changed in server.properties with the exception of one, and we'll cover that one here in just a second. All right, so we're going to give a name to our server. The name to my server is going to be AlphaBTB. The default port number, 19132. Remember at the beginning of the video, we said that this port, you need to be able to connect to the server from this port, that you need to have all this set up to make it possible for you to connect to this port number. All right, and this is why. So that's the default port number, and unless you are doing something of some significance or you've had a little bit of experience and you understand the reasons why you need to change that port number, it is best to leave it alone. So we're going to take the default. The next option is going to ask you for creative mode or survival. We're going to leave the default for survival. Maximum number of online players. This is entirely up to you. I'm going to leave it at 20. Spawn protection. This is the option that we're going to change in just a little bit. In your spawn protected area, the only person that can break blocks or anything is going to be an OP. I'm going to later install a plugin on my server that's going to make spawn protection handled from something else, and I'll want this disabled. I'm going to leave it enabled for now, but I'm going to disable this in the server.properties file. An OP is the next part of what you're setting up, and this is the only option that is not in the server.properties file. It has its own file, and we'll cover that in just a minute. But here you need to put in the name of a player who is going to be OP on the server. You can leave this blank, and that would be completely okay. Do you want to enable whitelist? A whitelist is a list of players that are allowed to connect to the server. If you're not on the list, you don't get to connect. That's as simple as it is. Most people don't necessarily need the whitelist. This is your personal preference, whatever you want. I do not want a whitelist. So query is all of the information that's provided to the client or to other servers about what is happening with your server, what version number you're running, what protocols you're running, and the number of people that are allowed to connect and the number of people that are connected. Real basic info, some stuff that sometimes you may or may not need. It's best just to leave this as a default for no. The second option that follows after that is Archon protocols. Most people don't need Archon. If you need Archon, you'll know that you need Archon. If you don't know, or if you're kind of halfway between, well, I might need it, leave it as no. Once you're finished with this, you're going to get information that tells you what your external IP address is. That's going to be incredibly important that you write that information down, because you're going to need that to connect to your server. So once you have that info, once you know what your external IP address is, then press the enter key, and it's going to start the server for you. So we can see that the server started without having any errors. If we had errors, they would have shown up in red, or we would have had some other problem listed here. All right, but at this point, the server has started and is working exactly as expected. So we're going to test and make sure that we can connect to this server. So we're going to open the Minecraft client. We're going to add a server to our servers list. In the server address, we're going to use the IP address that was given to you during the setup. Do not change the default port number. Notice that this is the same as what was already set up by default in your server. So the only reason you need to change port number here is if you changed it during the setup. We can see over here in the console that my player is connecting. We're getting some basic information about player connection. Everything seems to be good to go. And here we are in a basic PocketMine world. Very vanilla. Nothing fancy, but we are actually able to connect, and we can see that in the console for Linux. It shows us the information. So if we say something in the console, or we attempt to use a command here, we should get some info. I'm going to change my game mode to 1, and we can see that that showed up on the server. And then if we do something from the server, it showed up in the client. Fairly standard, straightforward stuff. At this point, you now have a basic PocketMine installation running that will allow clients with matching version numbers to connect to your server. There's a lot that you can do from this point. Most of your changes are going to require that you stop the server and start the server again for those changes to take effect. So we're going to take a look at how that works at the moment. We're going to stop the server. You see over here that it gave me a server closed message on my game client. We're going to take a look at the files that are in the installation folder. Particularly, the one that was of most importance is server.properties. This is where all of the settings were that were in the setup wizard. And if you needed to change anything from that point, this is where you need to change it. The other one that's important is ops.text. All of your OPs are listed in this. So we're going to take a look at that one first. And here we can see that my name is listed up at the top. If you needed to add new people without using the in-game /OP command, you could do it here. If you wanted to take somebody off the OP list and you weren't sure how to spell their name, you could do it from here. There's lots of things that you could do with this file that are helpful for administration purposes. We're not going to make any changes for the time being. What we are going to do is we're going to look at the server.properties file. And here you have all the settings that were initially set up as part of the default. So your message of the day at the top here, this is going to show up in the server client listing. We'll see this here in just a minute and I'll go through that. Same thing with your server name, your game mode options, and the one that I said that we were going to change was going to be spawn protection. The default spawn protection is a 16 block radius from the center block. I don't want it enabled at all because it will conflict with the spawn protection plugins that I'm going to use later on down the road. So to disable spawn protection, your option goes to -1, not 0, not 1, not removing that line altogether. It has to be -1. If it is not -1, then there will be some form of spawn protection. Your players will run into problems while they're trying to build or create around the spawn area. So remember that. Spawn protection is -1 to disable. All right. So once your settings are saved, you can start the server again. I was talking before about the query option that was there and some of the information that you get from the query. This is the type of information that you get from your query. So if you had disabled this information would not be available. All right, so we're going to connect back in again and make sure that everything's still working. We can see that my client is connecting and that the server is recognizing that connection. We spawn back in and are good to roll. So that's it. At this point, you've got a basic PocketMine-MP installation going. Your server is able to connect, and you're ready to start doing any significant levels of customization that might be necessary for what you want out of your server. So if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer when I can. Thanks for watching.